this, you know what I'm saying, her golden child dynamic. So now that I look at this, I'm like, okay, I see this. I see my lack of desire to gain acceptance from Carol at some point in period of time. Carol no longer validates me. But there's a certain level of codependency that has already been established that I can't see through because I can't determine Carol's motivations. Motivations are important in determining uh, uh, or validating or not validating, or even more so, determining an individual's acts towards you. You know what I'm saying? Their behavior towards you. Because it has a motivator and these values and these goals in relationship to it. Because the values and goals are derived from the motivations. So I didn't understand her motivations. I couldn't see her as a narcissistic, as a parent, narcissistic parent. I didn't see narcissism as being her motivator. And therefore her goals and her values are derived from that same narcissistic motivation. So everything that she was doing as far as her value system and her goals associated with her value system were all derived from narcissistic motivations. So now I see that the narcissistic motivation, and it's a lot easier for me to understand, oh shit, all these unconscious things that were occurring to me that occurred to me before I even turned 17. That were, the need to bring in a narcissistic step parent. Why she chose Calvin over Butch, even though I chose Butch over Calvin. When she gave us an opportunity to choose, oh yeah. And see, even that was a narcissistic parental move. I mean, Carol is a textbook narcissistic mother. Every single fucking goddamn video, every single fucking study might as well have had a picture of Carol and said Carol after every single description of the behavior. Because she runs the spectrum of narcissistic behavior. Like, okay, when the cops came, I just want to take care of my sissy. I need to oh God, Carol. And then Brian needing to be Carol's chief initiating fucking flying monkey. Because he starts to lose his golden child status and starts to become the scapegoat. And needs his original scapegoat in order to foster his codependent relationship with Carol. He can't have that codependent because he doesn't have the emotional confidence to break away from Carol. He hasn't established the emotional fucking confidence, so therefore the psychological confidence, so therefore the mental confidence, his own cognitive confidence to break away his codependency, so therefore he needs to mitigate it. So he needs to bring me back into the picture. And he's motivated by the same narcissistic, codependent motivations to bring me. He doesn't even see it unconsciously. And any sign of an emergency, be it he had my wallet for a year, some death in the family, some illness in the family, like when we were on the street, my father got sick. He had to contact me. It was an emergency in order to bring me back into the fold. It's his narcissistic, codependent, fucking instinct at work. So whatever it is, be it as little as a wallet that he had for a year, and he held it consciously and unconsciously, held my wallet for a year for the purpose of having some means, some motivation in order to motivate him, in order to get me back into the fold, in order to reclaim his golden child position in his codependent relationship with Carol. Just like when he had to have, because Carol followed me to the South. Carol automatically had to come to South Carolina when I moved to Atlanta. See, but she can't admit her codependency in relationship to this relationship. So she has to motivate Brian by moving him to scapegoat. So he's desiring his motherfucking codependent relationship as golden child in order to bring me back into the fold. The dynamic is crazy. And see, I see this shit, and I like the more I see, and it's all about an authentic epistemology. The more authentic my epistemology is, the more authentic my motivations are in relationship to breaking the codependency. Yeah, removing myself from the dynamic altogether. So therefore, I'm no longer a factor. Nah, B. Either you're gonna have to break your codependency with old girl, or deal with it on your own as being a scapegoat on your own, but you ain't gonna pull me back into that shit. And I see Elton as the codependent parent. You know, and Elton can't help but be codependent, and he's been delegated to child by Carol. Elton's not a equal parent, just like with Courtney. I've been delegated to child. I'm not an equal parent with her. So therefore, she's created, because she's a narcissist, because her mother's a narcissist. Her father is a co-enabler. And he's as a result of his own narcissistic mother. No. I'm talking about Michael now.
Oh.
His mother's a narcissist. Leola was a narcissist too, and see that dynamic. And you see how heavy it is within the black community?
Yeah.
I mean, narcissistic parenting, family dynamics are so strong within the black community and oversought by the mental health establishment, period. Narcissistic family dynamics are. But black families even more so, because of the lack of black psychologists to even examine this dynamic.
And the black psychologists are narcissists too.
And black psychologists are narcissists too, so they're ingrained in
black women.
Specifically black women who are engaged in the dynamic too. But you gotta look at women like Joy DeGroy, who can actually see the dynamic, bring fucking light to the dynamic, but don't even really actually categorize the dynamic as narcissism, because there's a connection to it. See, there's a certain level of, not saying that Joy DeGroy is a narcissist, but there's a certain level of enablement in relationship to the black. She's a black woman. She's not going to want to say certain dynamics about the black woman in relationship to her own trauma. It's a result of trauma, but therefore there's a certain level of responsibility that has to come to that in relationship to dealing with that trauma.
Who did the destruction of black boys?
Jawanza Kunjufu. Jufu.
Is that a female or a male?
He's a male.
Does he mention narcissism?
He doesn't mention narcissism in the destruction of. Again, and the thing about it is, Calvin is the one who introduces me to Jawanza Kunjufu. But it's mad that I comprehend Jawanza Kunjufu, because again, if you look at Calvin is the result of his mother is a narcissistic parent. And that co-dynamic fucking is transferred to his sisters, who transfer it to Calvin, but Calvin is the golden child in that dynamic because of the black mammy mentality in relationship to diminishing black women, as far as now they see them as competition in relationship to the black male, in which they make him automatically the golden child in that dynamic. So Calvin was the more fucking viable candidate for Carol kinesthetically. And see, our kinesthetic superiority makes it even more in the dynamic, because we can interpret that unconscious information far more unconsciously, because we have no awareness or no fucking cognitive confidence in our kinesthetic fucking intelligence, or our kinesthetic cognitive capabilities based upon the social dynamic. Nigga, we get into this psychology shit, nigga. And see, even the fact that I can switch from my African American, you know what I'm saying, psychology to the European dominant psychology as far as expressing intellectual fucking
Prowess
prowess. There you go. Or intellectual even dynamics
or intellectual independence and competence.
and intellectual competence and find and derive authentic confidence from it. Knowing that authentically I'm a black man in America and have no problem with utilizing the authentic terminology of an African and even having the authentic dress and authentic fucking, style of, and still have an authentic confidence deriving from that makes me a threat in this social structure that is kinesthetically perceived. One, by black people more efficiently uncognitively than it is by white folks. So therefore, there's a more immediate reaction from black folks, because they don't have because their unawareness of their kinesthetic perception. It's at 90% in relationship to unconscious information versus the conscious information, which is ego derived the 10% and id derived the 90%. So the id is vilified in our society while the ego is admonished. Woo! Dude, you gotta see it to believe it. Yeah. See, that's some real ass shit. The narcissistic dynamic in the black community, and that the fact that nature has made this. Now, see, the white fucking or the Western mental health establishment has made narcissism an incurable disorder. Has classified it as an incurable disorder because it's to their benefit. A narcissistic personality driven social structure is to the benefit of the white power structure because their God concept is based upon that ideology of a narcissistic personality disorder, because Yahweh is the manifestation of a narcissistic personality disorder. He derives his validation from outside sources and not internally. So pseudo. He only has pseudo validation from human beings because human beings are a product of his supposed creation. They exist outside of him. He cannot establish authentic visibility for himself. Yahweh is a narcissist by way of psychological standards. And if he is the psychological abnormality, then he cannot be the psychological standard for health. So therefore, he cannot be a productive God. He can only be the destructive God because he emerges from a psychological disorder.
Therefore, he's not God.
Therefore, he's not God. Like Neil said, what I'm saying earlier, he can't be all powerful and he can't be all good. He can't be both. Look, because, all right, if he's all powerful, then he chooses not to use his power where it counts in order to do the greater good. If he's all good, then he doesn't have the power to be able to utilize his good in all circumstances. So he's a contradiction in terms. There's no evidence of his existence.
If he's good, he's too moral. He can't be amoral and make objective decisions.
Right. He's too good, so he's too moral, so he can't make objective decisions in relationship to self-preservation of the very species that he's dedicated to make certain that they survive. Because he's supernatural, not natural. He's from the imagination of man, and not just from the imagination. Because God, period, even the healthy psychological God is from the imagination of man. It's just the sound ground consciousness of man, or man utilizing a more authentic epistemology versus an unauthentic epistemology. That's why the metaphor changes, because one is a healthier metaphor versus an unhealthy metaphor. We ain't talking, because we ain't mystery spooking. We're talking about psychological dynamics in relationship to neither God really exists. Man is the only God. Man chooses a psychologically unhealthy determinator or motivation versus a psychologically healthy motivation, which is one is a pseudo-epistemology and one is a authentic epistemology. One is based upon sound ground consciousness and the other is based upon unsound ground consciousness. Here we go. We're going to keep on giving it to you.